Lost in Plain Sight, a dramatic dialogue by Tony Angelo. I'll tell it simply, because truth rarely arrives dressed for ceremony. Most endings don't announce themselves. They don't crash through the door or tear the sky open. They slip in quietly, like a draft under the window, something you notice only when the room feels colder than it used to. That's how it began for me. Not with a disaster, but with a shift. A small one. The kind you can ignore for a while if you're stubborn enough, or proud enough, or afraid enough. I was all three. There was a morning, I couldn't tell you which one, when I woke up and felt a heaviness I couldn't name. Not sadness. Not fear. Just weight. A kind of gravity that made everything feel slightly harder than it had the day before. I told myself it was age. Men in their 50s are allowed to be tired. It's practically expected. But this wasn't the kind of tired you sleep off. It was the kind that settles behind your ribs and waits. I walked into my business that day the same way I had for decades, but something in the air felt different. The walls looked the same, the furniture the same, the people the same, but the place felt altered. As if it had shifted a few degrees to the left when I wasn't looking. I used to walk in with a sense of ownership, of belonging. I knew who I was in that space. I knew what I was doing. But that morning, I felt like a guest in a room I'd built with my own hands. It's strange how quickly familiarity can turn foreign. How a place that once felt like an extension of your body can suddenly feel like a suit that no longer fits. I stood there, looking at the same desk, the same files, the same calendar with its neat rows of appointments, and felt a distance I couldn't explain. As if the life I'd built had taken a step back from me. People noticed before I did. They always do. Clients who used to greet me with warmth began offering polite smiles, the kind that hover at the edges of the mouth but never reach the eyes. Employees who once came to me with questions started going to each other instead. Meetings that used to feel like collaborations began to feel like obligations. And every time I tried to push through it, the fog thickened. But I didn't say anything. Men like me don't talk about fog. We talk about numbers, projections, market shifts. We talk about anything except the quiet erosion happening inside us. I told myself I was fine. I told everyone I was fine. I said it so often I almost believed it. The truth was simpler, I was slipping. Not dramatically. Not visibly. Just enough to lose my footing. Just enough to feel the ground tilt beneath me. The business didn't collapse because of one mistake. It collapsed because I wasn't the same man running it anymore, and I didn't want to admit that. The world had changed. Faster than I could keep up with. Technology sprinted ahead. Expectations shifted. Clients wanted things quicker, cheaper, more automated. The community around me grew younger, sharper, more fluent in a language I didn't speak. I used to be ahead of the curve. Then I was on it. Then I was behind it. And then, without realizing it, I wasn't even on the road. I'd sit in meetings with people half my age, listening to them talk about trends and platforms and strategies that sounded like static to me. I tried to learn. I tried to adapt. But every time I thought I'd caught up, the world jumped forward again. It's a peculiar kind of grief, realizing you're becoming outdated while you're still alive. Watching the world move on without you, not out of malice, but momentum. People started looking past me. Not out of cruelty, just practicality. Clients who once called me first began calling me last. Opportunities that used to land in my lap drifted elsewhere. I became the man people respected but no longer relied on. The man they nodded to but didn't seek out. The man whose experience was appreciated but no longer needed. The more they pulled away, the harder I pushed. I worked longer hours. Took on more tasks myself. Tried to force the business back into shape through sheer will. But willpower doesn't fix a world that's already changed. And the harder I pushed, the more mistakes I made. Small ones at first. Then larger ones. Decisions made out of fear instead of clarity. Moves made out of desperation instead of strategy. I could feel myself unraveling, but I couldn't admit it. Not to myself. Not to anyone. Admitting it meant acknowledging that I wasn't the man I used to be. And I wasn't ready for that. So I put on the mask. The steady one. The confident one. The man who always had a plan. I wore it so well that people believed me. Or pretended to. Communities don't know what to do with a man who's unraveling. They give you space. They give you distance. They give you silence. They call it respect, but it feels like abandonment. I'd walk down the street and see people I'd known for years, people I'd helped, people I'd supported, and they'd smile politely, nod, and keep walking. No questions. No concern. Just that careful distance people use when they're afraid of getting too close to someone who's sinking. I don't blame them. People are busy. People are tired. People are scared. No one wants to get pulled into someone else's collapse. But it still hurt. More than I let myself admit. Because I wasn't just losing clients. I was losing my place in the world. My identity. My sense of worth. My sense of belonging. And the more I lost, the more I hid. I didn't want anyone to see the cracks. I didn't want anyone to see the fear. I didn't want anyone to see me as a failure. I'd spent my whole life being the reliable one, the steady one, the man who always figured things out. So when I couldn't figure things out anymore, I didn't know who I was. The collapse didn't start with the business. It started with me. And once the inside goes, the outside follows. At home, the silence grew heavier. My partner would ask how my day was, and I'd say fine before she finished the question. Automatic. Reflexive. A shield. She'd look at me with that searching expression, the one that tries to read the truth behind your eyes, and I'd look away. I didn't want her to see the fear. I didn't want her to see the man I was becoming. My children, grown, but still watching me the way children always watch their parents, started calling more often. Not out of routine. Out of concern. They'd ask if I needed anything, if I was sleeping, if I was taking care of myself. I'd laugh it off. Make a joke. Say I'm fine, don't worry about your old man. But I wasn't fine. And they knew it. The house felt different. Quieter. Heavier. Like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something to break. And something did. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just inevitably. The business reached a point where the numbers didn't make sense anymore. Expenses rising. Revenue shrinking. Clients disappearing. Debt creeping in like water under a door. I tried everything. Cut costs. Took on more work myself. Delayed my own pay. Sold equipment. Negotiated with vendors. Told myself it was temporary. But temporary became permanent. And permanent became collapse. The day I realized I couldn't save it wasn't dramatic. It was just me, sitting at my desk, staring at numbers that refused to move, feeling something inside me go quiet. Not break. Not shatter. Just quiet. Like a part of me had finally stopped pretending. I looked around the office where I'd celebrated wins, signed contracts, built a life, and it felt like I was looking at a stranger's space. The walls that once held my ambition now held my exhaustion. The desk that once felt like command now felt like confession. I didn't tell anyone. Not that day. Not the next. Not for weeks. I kept going through the motions. Kept pretending. Kept lying. Because admitting the business was failing meant admitting I was failing. And I didn't know how to do that. People sometimes ask, quietly, indirectly, never to my face, how a man like me could end up here. A man with a business, a family, a reputation. A man who worked hard, paid his dues, built something real. They ask it as if collapse only happens to the careless. As if homelessness is the result of a single catastrophic mistake instead of 1,000 quiet shifts. But it wasn't one moment. It wasn't one decision. It was the world speeding up while I was still catching my breath. It was the ground tilting beneath me before I realized I was losing balance. It was pride convincing me I could carry everything alone. Success doesn't protect you from falling. It just delays the moment you realize you're already on the way down. And by the time I understood how far I'd slipped, the life I'd built had already begun to drift out of reach. When I finally told my partner, it wasn't a confession. It was a surrender. She didn't get angry. She didn't blame me. She just looked at me with a kind of quiet grief, the kind reserved for things you can't fix. She said we'd figure it out. She said we'd get through it. But I could see the hurt in her eyes. The disappointment. Not in me, but in the situation. In the unfairness of it. In the speed of it. In the way life can turn on you without warning. We packed the house slowly. Carefully. Like handling something fragile. Every box felt like a piece of myself. Memories. Milestones. Years of work and love and life reduced to cardboard and tape. I tried to stay practical. Tried to stay focused. Tried not to drown in the emotion of it. But every room we emptied felt like a goodbye I wasn't ready to say. Losing the house wasn't just losing a place to live. It was losing the life we'd built. The stability. The routine. The sense of belonging. The sense of being anchored to something. And once that anchor was gone, everything else drifted. We moved into a smaller place. Then a smaller one. Then a temporary one. Then a situation that didn't feel like a home at all. And through it all, I kept telling myself it was temporary. That I'd bounce back. That I'd rebuild. That I'd find my footing again. But the truth was, I didn't know how. The world had changed. The industry had changed. The community had changed. And I wasn't the man I used to be. I was tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. I was lost in a way maps couldn't solve. I was present, but fading. Visible, but unseen. People don't know what to do with someone who's fallen. They don't know how to talk to you. They don't know how to look at you. They don't know how to include you in a world that's still moving forward. So they don't. They keep their distance. They offer polite smiles. They say things like hang in there and it'll get better and let me know if you need anything, knowing you won't. And you stop reaching out. You stop explaining. You stop trying to make people understand something they don't want to look at. You shrink. Quietly. Slowly. Until one day you realize you've become invisible in the very place you once belonged. I didn't disappear all at once. I disappeared in pieces. A little at work. A little at home. A little in the community. A little in myself. Until the man I used to be was more memory than presence. But here's the thing. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I'm still speaking. I'm still trying to understand how a life can unravel so quietly that no one notices until you're standing in the ruins of it. I'm still trying to understand how a man can be lost in plain sight. And maybe that's the part no one tells you about falling. It isn't the impact that changes you. It's the silence afterward. The way the world keeps moving as if nothing happened. The way people assume you'll find your footing again because you always have. The way you start to wonder if the version of you they remember is someone you can still return to, or if he's gone for good. There are days when I feel like a shadow of myself, moving through rooms that no longer recognize me. Days when I catch my reflection and see a man who looks familiar but not known. Days when the weight of everything I've lost presses against my ribs like a second heartbeat. But there are other days too. Smaller ones. Quieter ones. Days when something in me stirs, not loudly, but enough to remind me that collapse isn't the end of the story. It's just the part no one likes to talk about. I've started noticing things I used to rush past. The way morning light settles on the kitchen counter. The sound of my partner's footsteps in the hallway. The warmth of a mug in my hands. The simple fact that I'm still capable of noticing anything at all. There's a strange kind of grace in that. Not redemption. Not recovery. Just presence. A reminder that even in the aftermath, life continues in small, stubborn ways. I don't pretend to have answers. I don't pretend to know what rebuilding looks like at this age, in this world, with this history. I don't pretend the path ahead is clear or easy or guaranteed. But I know this, I'm not invisible to myself anymore. And maybe that's where it begins. Not with a grand gesture or a sudden revelation, but with the quiet decision to stop looking away from your own life. Maybe being lost in plain sight isn't a permanent condition. Maybe it's a moment, a long one, a painful one, but still a moment, in the larger shape of a life. Maybe the world doesn't need to see me clearly for me to start seeing myself again. Maybe the first step isn't being found. Maybe it's simply standing still long enough to feel the ground beneath you, even if it's unfamiliar. I don't know what comes next. I don't know how long it will take to feel steady again. But I know I'm still here. And for now, that has to be enough. Not as an ending, but as a beginning I never expected to need. A beginning I'm learning to accept. A beginning that asks nothing of me except to stay, to breathe, to keep showing up in my own life, even when it feels like the world has moved on. I'm still here. And maybe, quietly, slowly, without ceremony, that's the start of finding my way back.